people sometimes they understand you, and sometimes they don't, right? It's some of your decision, maybe they don't understand why you make that decision. Like when you left Celtics, then people said, why Ray wants to go to Miami. And then also there's since we're in Shanghai, and you and Paul Pierce is like the hot topic of this whole game, right? And can you just let me know what is the relationship between you and Paul right now? I think you guys have really having a good time this morning, right?
Yeah, we seen each other this morning. I I haven't had any issue with anybody, and I never have issue with people. It's never personal with me. When you sign up to play anything in any professional sport, we're playing a game, and that ultimately is what can't be lost sight of. It was the situations that all of us were in. We were kind of brought there and put in this great situation. And if it's not taken care of, then you kind of lose it. You take it for granted, you lose it. And, you know, my decision, it's tough for the fans to understand, you know, people who were in Boston, because for me, those were the hardest people to have to leave. Those were the greatest fans I played in front of. With no disrespect to any other fan, just the difference, the way they support the team home and on the road, and the way they followed the game, it was just a different element. But there's so much that goes on behind the scenes with teams, and the players understand it, and the organizations understand it. But when I left, what you know is that everybody on one side is going to say everything that they need to say to make their side look like they did everything that they could to make sure that they made it correct for me. But, from my opinion, I see something totally different. As well as, any player that was traded or moved on, like, you have your issues, you have your beefs that you have, and it's up to a team to make sure that they, in a free agency period, make sure that they take care of whatever issues that you may have. So if a team doesn't do that, then you have to make sure that you find the best situation that's available. And that was probably the hardest, one of the hardest decisions that I had to make, because I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to have to, but the team almost put me in a bad situation, and so I ended up being where it wasn't that. It wasn't that at the end of the day it ended up being Miami or Boston. It just ended up being Miami or Boston that I was no longer going to be playing for, the way free agency went at that time, which was sad to me, and it was sad to my family, because we're New Englanders. We live in Connecticut. We never want to leave. So when I realized that they weren't doing me any favors as far as keeping me and giving me any protections or guarantees of what was going forward, we knew it was time for us to move on. And that's the thing about sports. You just move on. You just have to move on, because teams do the exact same thing. When a team feels like you can't help them win anymore, they trade you. And they trade you and try and figure out how they could leverage you for their future, for somebody younger, for multiple pieces. When teams do it, everybody says it's a business. When I did it, I was disloyal, and I was a traitor, and I did all these things. And I always wanted to say that I loved where I was. If the team did what they needed to do to keep me, I still would have been there. But they didn't, and once I had to move, it was time to go. And so I had to, amongst the options that I had available, I made the choice to go to the best option that was going to allow me to win a championship, and it worked out 100%. The way I had hoped it would work out. Miami wasn't, apples and oranges. It wasn't great. We had a lot of things that we had to work through and deal with, and we always say the grass isn't greener on the other side, but I know my work, and I know what I need to do every single day to be ready and be prepared, and ultimately, that's what I had to do. and I was put in a situation where I had to, long term, I had to help win this team a championship, and it worked out. And so now I have 2 rings, and I'm proud of both of them for the work that I put in. And I don't regret anything, because everything that we do, it puts us where we are. And I've learned a lot. And again, it was always my cross to bear. When something negative happened, I just had to deal with it and move on.
So it's like the water under the bridge between you and maybe Paul, or does it?
Well, that's a conversation that has to be, had with Paul, because if you remember, I haven't said anything negative about those guys in the last 4 years that I've been, for more than 4. It's been 10. How long has it been? It's been 5 or 6 years since I've been gone. It seemed like it was a year or 2 ago. So I don't have any ill will. When I left, I was a free agent. So I haven't, it's disheartening when you hear things negatively that people say about you, because when you win, you're in love, like you love each other, and the families are in close-knit proximity at all times. So for me, I've never had, I didn't look, we won together. When you win together, you always share that bond, and that to me has never changed. It's just you have to, each person to a man knows that in the NBA it's such a business that when they can't use us anymore, then they trade us off or they cut us. And multiple people in the league, if you ask anybody who's been traded or cut, will tell you, hey, I couldn't serve them anymore, they got rid of me. And we've seen it evident with Isaiah Thomas just this past week. There's no loyalty in sports. It's not about loyalty, it's about a business. Each side has to do what's better for each side.
Even you're such an old school person, but you don't think there's some loyalty in the basketball or in the NBA? I mean, in the NBA.
Yeah, no, there's no loyalty about it. It's always what have you done for me lately, and a team will tell you that a certain player is not tradable, but we used to always say that anybody can be traded for anybody. Because if you take the best player in the league and trade him for 2 of the best players in the league, the other team is going to say, we'll take the 2 over just the 1. So it's easy and it sounds good to say for teams or organizations, but they'll trade anybody if a good deal is put on the table. You can't, any GM, they think about the PR behind it, but at the end of the day, they're going to say, well, this is going to make our team good for a long run, and we possibly can win a championship this year. So saying loyalty to a person is not relevant, because we as players, the best we're going to do is a 15-year career, in some cases 20-year career, and the organization has to think about long-term where they can go from you. You look at Kobe, he played in LA his whole life, but towards the end of his career, they had to start thinking about basketball after Kobe. So it's just the nature of the game. We can't play forever, but organizations always have to think about, how to move on from that franchise player that you've had a decade or so. It's just a tough situation, and we know as players, it's not personal. They just have to do what they have to do. So when I sign a contract somewhere else, you should not be mad at me just the same.